Welcome back to the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Lovell. With me once again, 411's Steve Cook, and we lied to you last time. We said we had run out of documentaries to talk about, and we were going to get back to discussing the 4 matches at WWE Hell in a Cell because they're moving all of them onto other shows at this point. But no, I kid. We actually have another one to discuss, and this one, Steve, I think was very captivating, but it's like the one word that stands out above the rest to me about this vice versa documentary on China was just sad. Like, what a sad 2 hours this was to kind of watch the downfall, like in actual, documentary form of this woman. And as we'll talk about, the cast of characters around her.
China had one of the most interesting careers of any female performer in pro wrestling, let's be honest. Not too many people took the road that she took. Not too many people did the things that she did. And I have to be kind of honest when we talk about this. A lot of people like to come out and say that they were so-and-so's biggest fan after they passed away. You know how it is. Anytime somebody passes away, you have a bunch of people trying to jump on board and saying, oh, I was their biggest fan, and blah, blah, blah. But I try to be honest about these things. And back in the day, I liked Chyna as the bodyguard for Triple H. The wrestling just didn't do much for me.
Right.
I just wasn't big on the intergender stuff. Chyna's believable. Don't get me wrong; she could hold her own. But Chyna's Intercontinental Champion was not something I was terribly interested in.
Yeah.
And then it kind of had this bad side effect where once she went to the women's division, and they touched on this in the documentary too. Chyna mentioned like once she went to the actual women's division, it was like a downgrade.
Yeah.
So it just kind of served the purpose of making the rest of the women just not look so good because Chyna was the only person that could wrestle the men. And now they don't have any women wrestle men, which is probably for the best. I don't know. That's intergender wrestling, probably another topic for another time. But just suffice to say, I was never a huge Chyna fan. And one of my main takeaways from watching this documentary, it's kind of weird. It's kind of self-serving, but I kind of feel bad. Because I know I've been writing about this stuff for a very long time, and I try not to look back too much at my old stuff because a lot of it is probably embarrassing, and I'm sure I probably said some terrible things about Chyna at some point, and I don't want to. I don't want to look back and see them because I'm sure I said some horrible things about the woman who's going through so much stuff as this documentary showed, and it just kind of goes to show for folks like me trying to write about this wrestling and having a good time. These are human beings, and Chyna's story it's kind of shines a light on that of how these people are human beings and they don't deserve to be treated this way. And unfortunately, Chyna was treated that way by a lot of people, as this documentary showed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the main thing to me was, I think you really do this is a much bigger thing about like her career and everything and what she accomplished and sort of the downfall and, the Triple H relationship we know. And that's always been talked about, just how much of an effect that had on her, not just from a personal standpoint, but obviously from a professional standpoint, because Jim Ross has told the story about, Chyna wanting the big contract and stuff like that. And yes, like you can understand that side of it, but also there is like a personal nature to it. And I thought that the personal side of all of these characters in this documentary crew,
they all seem like assholes.
Like
yes.
They were all aside, I guess. Really, like you said, there were certainly a lot of moments you could tell in this documentary, just showing some of the footage and everything. The one guy, I don't remember his name. I guess the one that looked less of a, I don't know.
See, I don't want to. I really don't want to remember their names because I don't want to give them any credit.
No, and that's what I'm saying. I couldn't even tell you what. I can tell you one name, and that is her manager. And this guy was just a complete. To me, like this guy is. I don't even know what you say. Like to me, it felt like, and you could see this in the footage. Like her manager, and this is how it comes across. Now, yes, we're seeing just footage, and I'm sure there was, much deeper conversations with him and her, and maybe there's a lot in that relationship we know nothing about, but still this does not paint him in a good light because it to me looked like he was sitting there trying to parade Chyna around like she's a circus act, and like that just it came across so horrible to me just watching this footage of him. Like they're getting out of the parking lot. I don't know if that was at the Comic-Con or the signing or whatever they were at, but it's like, he's treating her like she's like an elephant at the circus, where it's like, hey, come see China. Like, it's just, and I just, that was the theme I thought throughout. And obviously you can go to the very end where it's like, this guy's calling up the TV show intervention, knowing that she needs help right
Yeah.
away. And then
Yeah, he wants to do an intervention, but he wants to make sure there are cameras there, by
right.
God.
And then, even the camera, like he's taking the camera with him, as the guy had mentioned, one of the other documented people was like, knowing that this could be a possibility that China's then they're dead. But
we haven't seen China for a few days. Well, let me go get the cameraman.
Right. Let's get the camera because we need this footage for the documentary if she's dead. And what do you know? She is. And this guy still has talked about in some of the interviews, I think he did one with Wrestling Inc. or something, about how he still has the footage of, what happened there. And I think the guy on the documentary, one of the crew members, like mentioned that. He's like, why does this guy still have this footage? And then the memorial service he does, where,
oh, good Lord.
I mean, it's just like, I thought of everyone in this thing. This guy, to me, I mean, and we could go on and on. We could talk about this guy pushing her to go to her dad's gravesite, setting up the stuff with her mom, and then above all else, like this guy's saying, I was just trying to, be a spiritual help to her and all this other stuff. Like, what a load of shit this guy's bringing to the table, because I just thought that he came across absolutely awful in this thing.
Well, most people will tell you they're trying to be a spiritual advisor, or not the people you really need as a spiritual advisor. I mean, let's be honest.
That's very true.
Most of those people are just not the people you need that kind of role. There was also the filmmaker who seemed like he's drugged out most of the time. I'm pretty sure he's drugged out doing his interview for this show.
Yeah.
He seemed like he's on something. I don't know what. I don't care. It's kind of amazing to me. It tells you something about this show and the people involved. Vince Russo seemed like one of the better people on the show.
He came across, I thought, him and Mick Foley were the two people I thought that came across the best as you could, and like they were humans in this thing. And I thought Vince Russo said a lot of things about, he seemed like someone who had a genuine interest in China's well-being, whereas these other people that were around her did not. And they were only using her for her popularity, her fame, and basically, Vince Russo, Mick Foley, those were the type of people that seemingly, when they interacted with her, like they were providing the type of support system she needed versus, the shit that she was getting from all these other people that were around her trying to exploit her and her weaknesses, certainly throughout this period in her life.
It seemed like Billy Gunn was the same way to a lesser degree. I don't think Billy was as involved as Mick Foley or Vince Russo were, and Kevin Nash too. I think also Nash also came up with somebody that gave a crap. And then we had Sean Waltman, X-Pac, on the show, and Sean's a guy who's had his ups and downs. And we can place some of the blame at Sean's feet here as well, because he had a lot to do with some of the twists and turns that came in Johnny's life later on. And it seems like now Sean's in a better place, and God bless him for it. But yeah, is kind of all you can say about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does seem like, and you could, he did not shy away from that. He basically put it all on the table. It's like, look, we were bad for each other, especially at that point in both of their lives. And he does seem like someone, and I don't know how, comparisons to Lex Luger and stuff like we've seen, we talked about in the other documentaries with Luger and kind of how he's really, changed his life, probably, to a similar extent after everything that happened with Miss Elizabeth and such, and talking about, all the addictions and things like that they went through within their relationship. Obviously some similarities with this one too, I think, just in terms of, Waltman, but it does seem like he is, he's got his podcast now. He seems like someone that has turned a corner from that part of his life. But he did not, again, he didn't shy away from basically putting some of the blame on himself here in terms of their relationship and part of her downfall. So,
well, you know what, though, we're talking about China's exes, and we have to talk about one of the main ones that didn't appear on this show. That not on a live version anyway. He did have a speaking appearance on this show, but our friend Triple H, Paul, he did not come off well in this show at all.
No,
not in the slightest. He didn't come off well. The play of Stephanie didn't come off well. And even if you want to put aside the shady stuff with Triple H and Stephanie that led to the breakup, and that's all terrible on its own behalf. But then you go later on, and you have Triple H on the Stone Cold podcast talking about how well, we can't put China in the Hall of Fame because, and, I have an 8-year-old kid. And if they look up China on the internet, they'll find some, questionable material. Like, all I can say is, like, get the fuck out of here.
Right.
Like,
My
Jesus
first
Christ.
thought when I think of him saying that, every time, here's the first thing I go to. I'm like, okay, tell your kid to Google Triple H, Katie Vick, like, you know what I mean? Like, I know it's completely scripted, but it's like, still, like, how? I don't know. And again, I know those are completely different when you talk about the level of extreme, I guess, in terms of, I don't know, however you want to put it, but it's just like there. And as they, who was it? I think Russo was probably the one that said it, but it's like you think about some of the people that have gone into the WWE
Oh,
Hall of
yeah.
Fame, and
Yeah.
it's like, and you
You got
compare that.
murderers.
I
You
mean,
got drug addicts. Yeah, you got a whole line of people there.
yeah, and
I
you
don't know.
compare that to someone that certainly has entered something like that in their life, and it's not like it was something that China did for a living for a decade or anything. Like it's just sort of,
No.
I mean, yeah, like I think it's just a complete crock when you
And
go
even if
back
she
and
did, it's wrong to. Even if she did, it's wrong to.
right,
Put your. To stand on your high horse and just kind of cast aspersions on her for that. It is ridiculous. And Triple H, of course, we mentioned he played his role in that whole thing where once he starts hooking up the boss's daughter, it's like, well, you know what? Don't need her anymore. And when you know it, that not long after that, China is also out of the company. That's a coincidence, right?
yeah.
Wow, who would have thought?
Every time I see the clips, and they had, I guess, most of them in this, but like when you see the clips of Stephanie on the Howard Stern show, Triple H on the Howard Stern show, and they had a lot of footage from China when she made multiple appearances on that show. It's
Yeah,
just like I see that, and I'm like, I mean, that again is sort of, you talk about exploiting, a human being and sort of that side of it. It's just like, I mean, it was one of the people, I guess, one of the co-hosts on the Howard Stern show talking about, with Triple H was on there, the differences between
mm.
how
Oh
how
God.
Stephanie was feminine and China
Oh
wasn't, and
God.
it's like
Oh
just awful
man.
stuff. And it's just like that again, like there's another person that found a way to sort of exploit some of her weaknesses, and yes, maybe some people are like, well, she chose to do these things. Maybe it's doing these media appearances and doing some of this other stuff, even the documentary. Okay, fine. But it's like there was clearly a part of that mentally that where she did not, need to be put in those situations. And it's just like, Jim Ross said it in one of his podcasts. He probably did. I guess it's been a couple months now when he was talking about China, about, I mean, it really like came down to like, you cannot underestimate her simply having a broken heart after what happened with Triple H and how that affected her entire
Yeah.
life, and how that played a hand in her downfall. Not just the breakup itself, but really how everything unfolded from that point on, not just to lose,
How she
what
wound up out of the company afterwards.
exactly,
Yeah.
not just to lose the love of your life, but to lose it to your boss's daughter, and in a very sort of public way. Like it's
And
the
then
most.
WWE has a couple people mentioned in the show. WWE has a really good way of writing people out once they leave.
Yes, absolutely. And that, I think it was Russo. Look at this. Like everything we point, like Russo, I have the quote right here in my notes. He's like, WWE always has an excuse for letting people go and trying to write them out of history. And he's
And I
exactly
think
right.
Foley said something about it as well. I think they both
Yeah.
kind of chimed in like, well, once somebody exits WWE, they are gone.
Once she was let go, it was like she was completely erased. That's the quote I look. And I don't remember who that
Yeah.
was. I had that attributed to, but I wrote that in my notes. Like that is exactly correct. Like
And they
what?
pretty much had to have their arm twisted into including China and DX thing, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh, I think
As,
so. I
as,
mean, it's just,
as there's a public outcry there where they pretty much had to do it. I don't
and
think that was something they wanted to do, but that was the people coming up saying, well, wasn't China a big part of this deal? And well, yeah, she was. So there you go.
yeah, and I think and that's with like some of the reaction to this thing. Like there have been a lot of people that have sort of come out and talked about that. And one of the other points to that is like trying to mention how like they had the footage of it. I guess they were talking about it, but it's like she's recalling like no one will take her calls, no one will talk to her. Like after she is
She
exited,
shows up at WWE headquarters, and
right? And the
nobody
guy,
has time for her.
yeah, it's like no one will even acknowledge that she exists in a
In
sense.
their fairness, in fairness to WWE, that particular it was kind of a publicity stunt brought on by the
Yes,
directors and the manager and those guys. So
yeah,
I'll give them a little bit of leniency there because it was kind of a publicity stunt. But at the same time, wouldn't it have gone a little bit better if maybe somebody there to talk to China? Maybe.
yeah. And I felt like that was part of a continuing theme for her of when she left, she felt like she lost like everyone. Like, and I feel like that was it. Like, because and we've talked about this, right? If you go back and listen to these episodes we've done on the Dark Side of the Ring, the A&E biography, like, and we've talked about some of these people who have struggled with leaving the spotlight, getting out of the spotlight. Like we've talked about that sense of camaraderie, and you talk about for someone like her, and I think it was Russo that said this, but it's like at one point she had it all, she lost it all, and then she sort of wonders what's the purpose, but not just that. She's wondering all of that while losing sort of everyone around her that she's been on the road with day after day after day for years. And it's like you can see why someone can get to that point mentally to where it's just like what do you do? And I felt like we certainly saw this here when you go up and down and all the footage that they have. It's like almost like she just did not know how to respond to everything that happened, with the fallout from Triple H. You go after that, and like she never saw it coming. I think that's the best way to put it. Like she never saw this coming, and when it happened, and for her to find the love letter from Stephanie, which we've heard that story before, it's just like she had no idea how to bounce back from that, and it was all sort of downhill, even with the ups that she had in between. Like it could never get back to the way it used to be.
Yeah, it's real easy for us as Monday morning quarterbacks to sit there and say, well, maybe she should have seen it coming. But no, I mean, there's no reason for her to. And it was part of a kind of a whole life with her where I forget who said this again, but it seemed like she spent her whole life prior to getting WWE trying to find a family, trying to find people that loved her and respected her and all that stuff, trying to find her people. I wish it's probably Vince Russo, I don't know, but she's
Yeah.
trying to find her people, and then she gets to WWF, and she finds, I mean, she's there at Triple H, and she finds like the Mankind's and Billy Gunn's and X-Pac and all these people, and she finally feels like she's somewhere where she belongs. And when that's taken away from her, yeah, you're back to square one pretty much,
Yeah.
and you're looking for other things to do. Once that's taken away from you, and that's why you turn to drugs and why you turn to all that stuff, because you're looking for something to replace that.
Yeah, the footage they showed, I mean, it goes into that same thing. Like, they showed the footage of her. I guess that was the Comic Con thing. And I think it's someone had pointed out, you talk about sort of the haunting footage there where it's China. And I think it was Ashley Massaro. Was that she came
Oh
into
yeah,
China
yeah.
and it's like you saw that, but then
There's
right.
another story. No
Yeah. And
doubt.
it's like right after that, China sees Mick Foley. And it's like you see the emotional reaction there. And it's like,
Yeah, she can keep it together. I
yeah.
mean,
And
she
it's
couldn't
like,
even really say anything.
that is, you just think about that, and it's just like, my
And I'm
goodness.
sure Foley was the kind of guy who probably would have reached out even more, but he
Yeah,
probably didn't feel comfortable.
yeah, it is, and like I think that was one of the most, I mean, really the memorable pieces of footage to me, just like her reaction to seeing Foley at that signing, and it's just like, again, you look at it and you're like, you felt like she probably in her mind's thinking, this is someone that I really, was so close with, and like
And he
I,
was he was
yeah,
so important to her career too, because he was one of the first guys that's willing to take a bump for her.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of when she got there, in her role, there were a lot of men there that they were not comfortable with taking bumps off a woman and letting a woman kick their ass pretty much. And Foley was on board. He was like, "Cool, let's do it." And that obviously meant a lot to China.
yeah, it did. I mean, Foley's one of those guys, as we've always said. We talked about it sort of in the A&E stuff and everything. It's just like, there's just not you're not going to find many bad words about a guy like that who has really always been supportive. I think not only of China and the relationship there, but it's like he's always been someone that's been very supportive of sort of the women's evolution in WWE and those type of things. Like he's always been very outspoken on the need for that, and
Yep.
that's just, I mean, that's who he is, and yeah, he did, like, the interviews with him, and I mean, you even had interviews in this thing with Inoki. I mean, you had Chono, like, you just
Yeah.
had
Oh,
quite
it's
a
nice to see. What a nice to see Chono invited. That was
yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, and see, and I like, I didn't forget about it, but it's like, I'm sure now if you go back and watch Chono's match with China, like, you could probably, pinpoint a lot of things and say,
It's nice
well,
to hear how he was very impressed with her too.
yeah, and if you look at just the clips they showed, and again, it's probably been a long time since I've seen that match, but it's like, you could get that sense that, like, it was certainly a very unique match in terms of having her
Yeah.
in that spot against someone like
Chono
Chono.
didn't hold back, and she didn't hold back.
No, like China. I mean, Chono kicked the shit. I mean, he just kicked her in the face. Like, you could, I mean, you saw the footage. Like, he did not care, and she didn't either. Like, she was just going at him, and yeah, and it's just like, those are the kind of things you look back on, and you're like, my God, like, she was so unique, like, just unbelievably unique in terms of just what she brought to the table in wrestling. And it's like, again, it all sort of traced back to the childhood, that was some of the things she talked about, like, just the rough childhood she had, and
The
again,
relationship with the mother who she
yeah,
didn't see for however many years.
yeah, the mother and the sister, the sister was in this talking a lot about
Yeah.
really just being the
And they
only
had their
person.
falling out.
Yep. And I took her to rehab, I guess it was, and said she had only stayed, 10 or 15 minutes. And from there, like, that was it for them in terms of their relationship. And it's just like, there's so many, like, I don't know, like, it felt like there were so many sort of breaking points in this just throughout the entire story. And, but I think too, it's like, what makes it so sad is you see her, and yes, like, she's not the China you're used to seeing, but like, when you see the footage of her, like, she's going to China or going to Japan to be the school teacher and this type of stuff, and like, she's really trying to seemingly get away from all the bad stuff, and it's just, but it just doesn't hold. And
Even the rolled away, you can escape it.
yeah, like, she could never completely get away from it. And yeah, like, it's just, I don't know, like, that this was a rough one, because I think, again, it's easy, and you said it earlier, like, I think it's easy to sort of latch on to some of the things and go back in time and think, man, it was probably easy to say things not knowing the full situation, and really not understanding, and maybe only grabbing, sound bites and certain,
Yeah.
tabloid-esque type stuff, that really formed a picture on someone like this. But when you go deeper and you actually see this type of footage, and know how she was being treated by the people who were seemingly, quote unquote, trying to help her, I mean, it's so sad.
Yeah, trying to help. Big
Yeah.
quotation marks, big rolling of the eyes there. All those people they're just in it to try to make a funny movie, try to get see her naked. What are they trying to do?
Yeah.
I don't know what they're trying to do. They were just there along for a ride and trying to make a buck. And it's sad that she fell in with that lot, but just
Yeah.
uh,
Sad.
it's tough. It's a tough deal, and one of those stories that really makes you wonder as a wrestling fan, like, man, what are we watching here?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Well, I thought, and I put this in my notes, like, I thought this was the most, I don't even know, like, I don't even know what adjective you to use to describe it, but it's like her comment where, I this may have been during that last interview footage, which you talk about another thing of just complete bullshit, like, just them doing the interview with her in the state she was in, like, in the,
Yeah,
they showed clips of that throughout. But I think it may have been during that, or it may have been something, may have been one of the interviews before, but I think she said it during that, was like, her exact quote was, she's talking about sort of how she had got to that point, and she goes, "Did I do something that bad with my life, like, for me to be in this position and to feel like she's being treated that way?" And like, I'm thinking, like, no, like, what did she do? I was just like,
she
and
never murdered anybody.
yeah, like,
She never.
my
I
God,
don't remember her committing any crimes. I mean, you can talk about public. I mean, obviously the drugs, but
yeah.
she never hurt anybody that I know of.
See, and that to me was like, God, to hear that, and like, to actually hear it coming out of her, not even, not from Russo or Foley or any of those, like, it came from her mouth about, did I actually do something that bad with my life to feel like to be treated this way or to be put in this position to where I am clearly an absolute mess.
I mean, May from WWE, the biggest crime was she asked for more money, but for God's sakes,
Right. Yeah, and it's like that's one of the things you hear. It's like, and someone pointed that out, and you can, as I said, like I have nothing against Jim Ross, but it's like he had the job, and we know what the job entailed. He's talked a lot about that stuff on his podcast, and just being in that position with talent relations and having to structure contracts and help out with those negotiations and stuff like that. It's a tough job, we know it, but still, to tell me that you're not going to convince me that Chyna asking for a lot of money all of a sudden makes her a bad person. I don't.
What? They said the same thing about Sable too. Sable asked for too much money, but you know what? Sable married Brock Lesnar, so now nobody's gonna say a bad thing about Sable now.
Right. I mean, it's just and yes, like and I get that, but it's like, man, I understand. It's like, well, we had to let Chyna go because of the money, and she's wanting Steve Austin money and this type of stuff.
They
and
didn't
thinking
have
that
to. Yeah.
exactly. Like I feel like there's a lot more you can go into on that, and I don't think JR has said
the
that.
budget cuts. We gotta watch the budget. We gotta watch the profit margin.
Well, again, like what I said, the Russo quote about WWE always having an excuse for releasing talent or wanting to let go, and he's exactly
and
right.
Some fans will always buy into it too.
Yes, and there's always a reason, and like I said, I don't think JR says it maliciously, but I do think that's one of the things you can poke a hole in, just like what we talked about with Triple H's reasoning, for her not being in the Hall of Fame, and Foley.
Triple H is far more the villain than JR. Let's not sugarcoat that.
Right.
Triple H is far more a villain in this piece than good old JR.
Yeah.
Which JR just doing his job. Triple H, well, God, I mean, I would like to be nice to the old boy, but it's tough these days. It's getting tough. I'm not feeling like I need to spring for a fruit basket for the guy anymore. I'm telling you, we only be sending the guy any fruit. That's all I'm saying.
The comments don't age well, and those specific comments do not age well at all at this point. And as we said, like a lot of us probably said things that don't age well, but still, this is a pretty.
I have raised my hand.
I have. I'm sure. We could probably do an entire podcast series on these things, but yes, we're not going to.
Let's not say we did.
We're not going to. But yes, it's just. Like it just there was so much stuff in this that I mean, we talked about like being sad with a lot of these and sort of the emotions that the Dark Side of the Ring episode specifically have brought out. When you go back to all the different stories, and again, there have been so many in Dark Side of the Ring, whether it's Owen, Jake, there's lots of different ones.
This one's even sadder because it was Chyna telling her story.
Yes, there you go. That's
without the Dark Side interludes, without the reenactments, without Chris Jericho narrating, which Jericho and Chyna had quite the relationship too. They should have found Jericho for the former co-intercontinental champions. Come on now.
Yeah, no, I don't
know if Chris looks back on that fondly, but
yeah, and that's what I say. Like Jeff Jarrett, I think when he did his podcast on talking about.
Has he talked about? Okay, I'll ask you because I have not. What do you say about Chyna?
So he was. I thought he was very complimentary of her, basically, saying because I think he specifically addressed.
We all know there's a big story behind that.
Right. The No Mercy, whatever it was, 99.
Or the contract expired before that day, actually. So.
Well, and I'll tell you how it comes across. And I know we're going on a bit of a sidebar here, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's worth mentioning. Yeah. Jarrett, I think, comes across really well, and you almost want to say good for Jeff Jarrett, like because he talked about.
I wanted to anyway for squeezing more money out.
Exactly.
I was on his side anyway.
And I think a lot of people should have been, but I don't know if that was always the case. But I think like he did. He talked about, hey, they cut my contract when I started. Like they had, and he mentioned like him and Jim Ross did not have like there was a lot of tension there, based on that contract and such. But he was like, hey. He said, he's like, he didn't want to use the word holding up, but like, that's what he did. And he's like, I did. I said, we need to find a way to make this work. You did not, basically adhere to the terms of my contract. And so I want to make sure that we can make this work. And what he had said was, one of the things that I think he kind of mentioned was like, look, he did not want to take anything away from Chyna because he thought that, Chyna had...
I'm sure it wasn't anything personal.
No, and, she had been put in a position to have that moment, I think was kind of the way he worded it, and don't quote me exactly on that, but she had been set up to be in that position, and he had no problem with any of that. But it was just like his bigger problem was with WWE, and
Yeah.
like that's I will say this, and we've said it before, but again, I know sidebar, but like Jeff Jarrett's podcast has been, I think, like Conrad, as we know, does a lot of podcasts, and it's just I enjoy him. I know there's a
He
lot of
does a
them.
few.
He has a few, like was it 7 days a week, 6, 7 days a week now, but like
Yeah.
Jeff Jarrett's has been very good in terms of just going into the whole TNA story. Which there's another thing, like the China stuff there, and it's like, I mean,
Mm.
there's always those connections, and yeah. So I know we went off on a little bit of a sidebar there, but that was something that is a big part of her career, right? I mean, being put in that
That's a
position, and
huge part of her
yeah,
career, being put over the Intercontinental Champion.
yeah. So, man, I don't know. It was sad to watch this.
And and I applaud Jeff Jarrett for holding up Vince for getting more money. I don't blame him for that at all. I
No.
wish more people would do that.
Yeah.
I wish more of these talents would stand up for themselves.
No,
They don't, especially these days. They don't.
No, it's a different situation.
They bow down they bow down and get in the fetal position. It's a sad situation.
Well,
Ugh.
there's another podcast in
Yeah.
terms of which we've had some of those before. Talking about that, but yeah, I think that was it, man. This the takeaways from this 2 hours, and man, you talk about 2 hours of just.
I mean, definitely. I definitely recommend watching it if you
Yes.
haven't watched it yet. Although I know, May you're listening to this podcast and you haven't watched it yet. I think you probably should have if you're listening to the podcast anyway. But
Some people just want to get it through
us.
us. Like some people just want to watch through our voice, which, hey, I can appreciate that. Thank you. We appreciate it.
I've always been confused by that because I'm not a big podcast person in general. I
No.
mean, I click on the YouTube clips and whatnot, but
Talk about holding up for money. Everyone should know what we have to do to get Steve on this podcast. I mean, you talk about someone holding up for money.
oh God, yeah, I actually bring the gun. I actually, Jeff Jarrett didn't bring the gun. I bring the gun. I'm like, hey, here's what I want. This is what I want. God damn it.
Oh man.
That's why I'm not running as much these days. But that's another story for another time.
No. Yeah, it is like it's just it's you should like this is. I think this was, and again, I try not to use.
But definitely check it out.
It is like it's very worth the watch because I think you get a much deeper appreciation for Chyna and her story.
I definitely did.
Yes,
I definitely did. And I said, as a person, as I made earlier, I was not like Chyna's biggest fan. I mean, I stated earlier, like a lot of people like to come out and say, oh, I was the so and so's biggest fan right after they passed away, and that was not me. But definitely after watching this show, I definitely gained appreciation for what she went through. And I had before. I mean, I felt bad about the whole Hall of Fame nonsense. Where Chyna should have been included before she's included. Is the whole thing. I understand, but you know what? I don't appreciate Triple H as much these days. I'm not gonna lie.
You're not probably going to gain a deeper appreciation for him if you're
No,
looking
oh
if you're
God,
looking to
he
find
split the
that.
good year of NXT.
Yeah, if you're looking to find that, you probably watch NXT and understand.
Find one of the Triple H documentaries on Peacock.
Well, there's one from 2011 or 13. You're going to
There you
miss a
go.
pretty big chunk of the story probably, since he went on to do some things after that. But yes, this is probably not the one if you want to see. But listen, if you want to, I don't know I don't know, but if you want to get a better sort of understanding for the relationship that like people like Mick Foley and Vince Russo had with Chyna and really their positive support and interest they had in her life, this is definitely something you'll get that because as we said, that was not the case for the people like her manager. Again, I don't want to aim
don't even the manager, the filmmaker, all the people involved with that.
Man,
oh God,
just
I don't remember their names. I don't want to remember their names. They deserve no credit. They don't deserve to be remembered. They're assholes.
Well, that's it's brutal. I think
If they're listening, then kiss my ass. Putting that out there. Yeah.
Well, that's safe. We'll be sure to bookmark that in the.
I'm sure they're listening. Yeah, I'm sure. Well, who knows?
And,
Who knows what they're doing?
And the timestamps, we'll timestamp that. Steve tells documentary crew kiss ass. We'll be sure to put that in the timestamp so you can quickly get to that if you like. But yes, definitely go check this out. This will, as we know, Dark Side of the Ring doesn't return until September, but this is one that definitely worth the 2
And
hours.
I'm glad that I'm kind of glad that China got the chance. She got the chance to tell her own story here
Yeah.
without, like I mentioned earlier, without the interludes and all the Chris Jericho narration, all that stuff. I thought it was a good story to tell right there. And like I said, I feel bad.
Not everybody gets to tell their own story, as we've seen with a lot of those Dark Side of the Ring episodes. But yeah, the fact that she did, this is, I would highly recommend this because this is there's so much in this, and like I said, I do think you come out with a much deeper appreciation for kind of the state she was in, really after she left WWE and kind of everything you saw after that. It's easy to see all the sound bites and clips and
You see the
memes and
sound bites, you see the headlines, and it seems like she's a
yeah.
kind of a running joke for those years, but you don't really understand what's going on there. And that is
No.
the mistake I made, a mistake a lot of other people made at the time. We didn't know what all that's going on there.
Yeah, and as we know, there are a lot of people out there who do not shy away from exploiting someone with a lot of fame and popularity, and putting attaching themselves to that to try
And
to.
those people, I want 5 minutes in the room with those people.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
gonna.
I'm issuing a challenge now too.
Yeah, that's
Give me 5 minutes with that manager guy.
my goodness. we're, we're gonna timestamp that as well.
Yeah,
So if you. Who's gonna? I guess I'm gonna have to review the show. You're not gonna be able to review the show yourself if you're wrestling this guy. So I'll have to do a
yeah.
special 411 Mania review for Steve Cook versus whatever this guy's name was. But yes, that could be.
Contrary to the popular rumor going around right now, that is not actually the third Hell in a Cell match on this upcoming show. It's not the third Hell in a Cell match because Triple H wants nothing to do with this.
What a
Triple H just washed
segue.
his hands of all this.
We were just about to get into what is probably going to be the quickest Hell in a Cell preview you will hear on any podcast. But Steve set me up great for the segue there because it's like we were talking about this before we started recording. It's like I appreciate, I have nothing against some of the matches. You're going to have Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley for I don't know how many times they've fought at this point.
It's a good match, though.
Yeah, it's going to be a good match. So I said it doesn't really matter how many times. Like you're probably going to get a solid match out of it. And then you've got Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley, which the road to
Should be a
this
good
match should be a good match, but the road to this match has been one of the most convoluted, wild storylines, just in terms of why this match is happening. I have no idea, but it should be a good match. Bianca and Bayley should be a good match. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn should be a good match. But still, it's like the reason probably that most people wanted to watch Hell in a Cell was Roman Reigns, Rey Mysterio, in my opinion. Maybe that's just my personal, but
even though the outcome was totally predictable.
Right, but
we all knew Roman Reigns was winning that match, no matter what.
But you just you had that thought of Roman Reigns going to destroy Dominic Mysterio's dad in front of him on Father's Day. Like I just thought that was the perfect heel. Like I don't know, but to move it to Friday SmackDown, hey. It was a fine match. I'll tell you one thing.
Fox got tired of plugging Peacock. I don't blame him for it.
Well, but you know what felt so weird is watching that match on Friday was like that's the first time we've ever had a Hell in a Cell match with commercial breaks, right? It just you can't. It takes away. Like I just.
Well, you know what? They had the Hell in a Cell match on Raw back in 1998. At the end of the show, I don't think they had a commercial because during the overrun.
Right.
That weird tag team match with was that Austin Undertaker and Kane Mankind.
Yeah.
That weird shit.
I mean,
which doesn't even really count, but
I know. It's just I don't know. And I mean, this is again, I don't know that the gimmick pay-per-views itself. There's another podcast
you could have a Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn Hell in a Cell in a Ring of Honor.
Right. It's like I just man, I don't know. I'm not like trust me, this is not me just sitting here bashing WWE, but I just think it's like everything, this is nothing new, but everything just seems to change like on a whim, and we know why. We know exactly why.
We saw it change on a whim this week.
Yeah, it's just like how can you have a deep investment knowing that things change so much? But I will say, I don't know. Like maybe I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but it's like surely when they get back to these live crowds, they can't possibly do some of the stuff they've been doing. Like they can't possibly do it.
Well, they can't do some of the production. I mean,
right? Yes. I mean, I don't know. I want to think that some of this is just like, hey, we're just gonna we have no ideas. We know exactly what we want to do. We get live crowds back in July, and then we know what we want to do at SummerSlam, but we have no idea what we want to do before that. So let's just throw everything we can out there, and we don't care if it makes sense or not. God, I hope that's it, but I don't know.
The amazing thing is with Roman Reigns is you cannot have a SummerSlam without him against like John Cena or The Rock.
Yeah.
You cannot not have a WrestleMania without Roman Reigns against John Cena or The Rock, because John Cena or The Rock are the only people that I can think of that would be seen as valuable contenders. Roman Reigns, am I right?
Yeah, because if Brock,
who else is there?
If Brock came back and beat him, I don't know that people.
Okay, Brock.
Like, I don't think people want that. I just don't think but I think they put themselves at this point now, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because again, otherwise, if you take Roman Reigns out of the equation in WWE for the past however many months, you got some decent stuff, but my God, like it is nowhere near like
Well, SmackDown pretty much is a Roman Reigns show, and thank God for it.
Exactly. I was gonna say, like, without him, and it's so funny to sort of think about, because if we had this conversation however many years ago, and you think about, it's like, oh my God, like, would we have ever predicted that this is like?
Because they finally took the internet's advice and turned him heel.
Yes.
He's a goddamn heel,
right,
motherfucker.
Cornette. Right?
Finally.
But like they put themselves in a position now to where it's like they have to get this right on who beats him. Because I don't want this to be something to where this loss has to mean something. I think they've understood that, because otherwise they could have had anyone beat him at this point. But I'm like, surely to God, they understand this loss, when it happens, it has to be the biggest thing they've done in a long, long time.
And as much as I love Rey Mysterio, that's not it.
Right, that's not it. And it wasn't, I mean, and I say this again, but like Cesaro at that time, it was not it. Like Cesaro was not going to be that guy either. But it is, like, if it's not John Cena, if it's not The Rock, then you better sure as hell, like, elevate someone to that level. But they haven't, like, Big E. Like, I would have said Big E could be that, but they haven't done anything to make me believe that Big E is going to be that guy.
Absolutely not.
Right?
No,
and it's just, so I have no idea who to even invest in outside of John Cena or The Rock.
Maybe?
Commander Aziz. Oh my goodness! Are they
he looked fine in the match.
Well, hell, they're going to bring. They brought Samoa Joe back. Are they going to bring Aleister Black back and let him, be? I don't know. Like, it's just. Speaking of which, you want to talk about a positive? Like Samoa Joe in NXT, that's a positive. So,
you know what? I mean, I hope Samoa Joe didn't take too big a pay cut.
Yeah,
that's all I hope there. I hope that they didn't completely like half the salary or something, because that is the best place for Samoa Joe. And, I know that we would like to dream match book him in AEW or ROH, New Japan or whatever, but that role in NXT with him as Regal's backup, that is the best possible use for Samoa Joe right now.
Yeah.
He choked out that Adam Cole bitch. Is good. I liked it.
That was a great episode of NXT. I know a lot of people have said that, but that was one of the best NXT episodes in a long time, I think. So that is something. And as we said, we did spend some time bashing Triple H.
Regal viable and Joe's there doing stuff. That's the best possible solution to all the issues. And I just hope the guy didn't take too big a pay cut. Is all I'm hoping.
We will give Triple H some credit for that.
Unless Triple H cut his pay.
Well, that's true.
Then we won't give him credit for it.
Then we're gonna bash him for that. But
that's right.
No, it's I'm at least intrigued by the potential there, because if you read some of the rumors out there about, they may be trying to get Karrion Kross and others like on the main roster here sooner rather than later. So it's like,
oh well, I think most NXT fans would like Karrion Kross on the main roster.
I think so too. And
there you go.
I mean, I don't disagree with them in a sense about his act being, I don't know. It's something that and we've heard this so many times and we've said it, but it's like, you can see that act as something that Vince would love. But as we know, Vince's love only goes so far and for so long. So that's the problem.
It can change on the whim, as we saw this past week.
Yes. Yeah. So that is something to keep in mind. So positive vibes with NXT. Hell in a Cell.
Karrion Kross will be probably part of your next future endeavors.
Yeah. Well, apparently the draft's coming back in a couple months too. So
good Lord.
Oh, God, I hate the draft. That's another podcast.
I do, too. It's awful.
The draft is such a mess because no, never mind. I'm about to extend this podcast like 4 hours if I go into my next rant, but we'll hold that off for another episode.
Come on, let's hear it.
No, listen, we have to have a teaser for the next episode, so we're going to use that right there. Like, there's going to be something, I'm sure. for us to talk about on the
We'll
next
round the
episode.
draft for 4 hours. All right.
Yes, maybe we should go back and watch like the first WWE draft. And what was that? 2002. My God,
yeah.
what an interesting
I
show
remember
that
that
was.
mostly because Vince drafted Kurt Angle, and Kurt Angle smarted Vince up to draft Chris Benoit.
Yes.
I remember that.
I remember looking back at those
I
rosters.
remember that from 20 years ago, and I don't remember what happened on Raw.
It was right. That's the thing. I can remember like you know what else we had on that first? Here's a random nugget. I'm sure people. I don't know how many people remember this, but we had a Taz versus Mr. Perfect match on that Raw. That draft. I don't remember anything about the match.
That sounds like a.
But how about that?
Like
I'm sure it was great. Taz and Mr. Perfect. That's all I remember.
That Mr. Perfect 2002 run had a lot of potential.
Oh man, when he got to
and fell off the table pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna say he got to the was it the final four of the Rumble?
Kurt has issues there at that point. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's that. I'm writing this down. We're gonna go back.
He looked awesome in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, he was in the final four. Him, Triple H.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was Angle. Someone else.
Yeah, perfect flex on Angle is fucking great.
Yeah.
But then the bloom came out the rose pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then there's that plane ride from hell.
I was gonna say there's a segue. Yes.
We'll be doing a podcast on that eventually.
We've set up a lot of stuff here. We've set up future Dark Side of the Ring podcast. We've set up future WWE Draft watch along podcasts. We got it all figured out. So but there you go.
We build for a future here.
We do.
Not like some other companies. We build for a future on this show.
Long-term booking.
Long-term booking is what we do here.
Yep. So we're long-term booking ahead. We may actually, I'm not even joking, we may actually go back and revisit this first draft because WWE, if you didn't know, and Steve, I'm about to put us in another position here where we can go on a rant. There you go. I was about to say it. Like it's on Peacock, which there's another podcast. About the WWE Peacock relationship. But they did just add all the SmackDowns from like 99 to 08. So there's a lot of potential there, and I've been wanting to go back and rewatch a lot of the sort of the Ruthless Aggression era stuff, not necessarily the Triple H reign of terror on Raw, but some of the other stuff. Of course, SmackDown, as we know, the SmackDown 6 and all that was a good time. There's a lot we could go back and revisit. So we may do that in one of the upcoming episodes, and I'm already marking it down. We're gonna do, I don't know when it's gonna be, but we're gonna do an episode on that first draft because I'm very curious. We might even redraft. Like I don't even know what we need to do, but it could be interesting to look at that.
How about Kurt Angle smarting up, Vince on Chris Benoit? There'll be a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah. A lot happened. That's all I remember on that episode. But we
Ric
will do
Flair
that.
drafts the NWO. Oh, what the hell? What are we doing here? What is this? What are we doing?
Of course, we had to split. The Dudleys. We had to do all that. Like this, we had to be cool, and
we gotta make Deacon Batista.
Yeah.
Reverend Devon Deacon Batista. So it did actually work out.
It did work out in that way. Yeah, like it did work. So we'll see when we go back.
Not for Devon, but worked out for Batista.
Well, yeah, that is a good point. Batista went on to be something, and hopefully this podcast will continue to be something in your regular listening rotation. But Steve, anything you got going on over at 411 coming up? I know we've had a lot of stuff go up lately. We talked about the top Ultimate Warrior matches, all the other stuff you've done. We've had Botch.
The top Hell in a Cell matches?
Yeah, top Hell in a Cell matches.
Talked about that.
So check that out. Hell. Anything else you got up there?
I was going to review the AEW Dynamite show, but then my power went out, so that wasn't good. Yeah, so Jeremy Thomas had to take over. So I'm sure it was a good piece of television. I'm sure it was good. I'm not gonna lie. But we got the ROH coming up, and then we'll get doing another top 7 coming up. Another Botched. There's always something in the mix. Good sir.
Yep, check it out. 411mania.com. You can find all our other stuff over there. Of course, we'll have coverage of everything WWE Hell in a Cell on Sunday night. You can check that out. All of our reviews, live coverage, columns, news, everything you need. 411mania.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. Any podcast app you use, you can search for 411 on wrestling, find it there to subscribe. Because again, we've set up a lot of episodes here in the future. So if any of that sounded interesting to you, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our thoughts on the first ever WWE Draft, Peacock WWE. We got a lot of stuff.
It's coming.
And then, of course, as we said, Dark Side of the Ring returns in September. We'll have stuff on that, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about in the world of wrestling before then. So check it out, subscribe, all that. And as always, the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family, we continue to put that in the show notes. Continue to share if you can. And thanks as always for listening to the podcast. And we will talk to you next time here on 411 on Wrestling Podcast.